I'm sitting across from Ashley Roberts. We were just catching up on all the cool things that have happened to her since graduating from the 5X certification program and what an incredible mastery she's bringing to the world. We are going to talk about feminine embodiment today, the power of dance, being in your feminine versus masculine energy. Before we get into all those cool topics, Ashley, how are you doing today?
Hi, Carolina. I am doing so good. I am just so thrilled to be here and to be having this conversation with you today.
Oh, me too. Okay, let's just start with the basics and we'll kind of rewind a little bit later on in our conversation too. But starting with like feminine embodiment, that's something that is talked a lot about probably on social media. And so I feel like what happens oftentimes, and especially in this personal development world, we get these like buzz phrases that like are circulating in the consciousness, but it's kind of harder to ascertain like what does that actually mean? What does that actually look like? So can you explain to us like what feminine embodiment is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like to explain it, I would like to quote someone who I've been doing a lot of research on. Her name's Marion Woodman, and she wrote the book Conscious Femininity. She says that feminine energy is what grounds us. So it loves us and accepts us in our totality. But the challenge, especially in today's world, is to embody this. And I feel like the reason for that is because we live in a world that rewards doing. If you're not doing, you feel like you're getting behind. We're constantly comparing ourselves to other people online that are doing big things. And so, being in your feminine is all about being. It's about being able to soften and being open to receiving, being able to go with the flow of life. Another person, so Marion Woodman she's a Jungian analyst, and so Carl Jung does a lot of speaking on this as well, and also Alan Watts. But I think it was Alan Watts that said the feminine is like water. It's like the water in the valley. The masculine is like the earth. It's like mountains. And so it provides the structure that supports, the riverbed for the water to go through. But the water is also just as powerful as, the structure. So we need both. We need the masculine and the feminine energy. But it's like I'm feeling more and more women are wanting to lean into that feminine energy a little bit more because we're feeling like it doesn't really, always being in our masculine, always doing, always planning, always creating the structure is taking us away from our spiritual biology. And the reason I like the word, I like to use spiritual biology versus our natural biology is because this isn't to me, it's not really a gender thing. Like there are also men that, feel like they're more in alignment with feminine energy. And so, I just feel like it's more and more women. We're seeing like this whole transition from boss babe era to soft girl era. Like we're seeing a lot of that online right now. And it doesn't mean that we're like not wanting to like run businesses and, have ambition and all this stuff, but it means that we're wanting to do it from a place that's like, let's like allow ourselves to kind of flow with this instead of like, being in this place of like competition and always pushing. And that all has like a beautiful place. But I'm surrounded by women right now that I'm just seeing are leading from a very feminine place. And you were a good example of this too. When I went through your program, it's like there's room for all of us here. We all have space here. There's so many people that need coaches. And so it was like, it's leading from a very like place that's like there's room for all of us. It's like non-competitive. Um, and so yeah, it's for me, feminine embodiment is really just being in tune with your body, being in tune with what it is that you value and wanting to like structure your life and your career and all of that around being in alignment with, who you are. And just kind of having like such conviction for who you are, feeling worthy, feeling enough for just being a woman. I just feel like we've gotten so far away from that, and I mean, this goes back thousands and thousands of years, like the stuff that I'm reading and the research I'm doing, it's like, this is just kind of us returning back to, what we already know deep in our bodies, like our soul as women, that we, we deserve and we are enough, as we are. And we don't need to prove ourselves. We don't need to prove like because we do all these things. I was basing a lot of my worth on like my income and my career and look at all my achievements, and just always feeling like I was falling flat or like I wasn't enough. And so feminine embodiment work has really helped me to love and accept myself for who I am, without defining like all of that stuff, defining who I am and my worth.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's just so much to it that's aside from like our gender or gender roles, and that, we have been really, I guess, from historical reasons, like put in a place where the masculine is always being valued. And so it's like when you are in that power mode, when you're doing a lot of things, when you're achieving a lot of things, and, as we kind of got equity and equality in society, it's like women had to almost like change the way that we are in order to like show up in this world. And so it's
Yeah.
like there's a lot of good things that come with that because like now we have the freedom and the autonomy and like able to like build any structure and stuff like that. But like you said, it could be like a little bit against our spiritual biology. And same thing with a man. Like a man could be running maybe too masculine as well. And so it's like a balance of
Mhm.
both. So understanding like that's kind of how it works. And it's like an energy that like both you will have both, right? So it's not like you have to always be in your feminine. There's a time to use your masculine too. How would you know that someone is like operating too much in their masculine to a point that it is actually hurting them, that it isn't serving them any longer? And then maybe there's a specific instance of your life where you felt like that too.
I mean, yeah, I see it in a lot of women that work in corporate. I see, you can just tell when a woman is mainly operating in her masculine, she becomes very hyper independent. She doesn't want anyone else to help her. She likes to control everything. She likes to plan all the get-togethers. She's very, and so you see this dynamic and you can see it in your friendships, you can see it in your relationships. And what I'm learning is that when you are in a relationship, when it's a man and a woman relationship, if both the man and woman are mostly operating in their masculine, then you lose it, it kind of repels. There's not this polarity, there's not this attraction. So a woman that is, in her feminine, she becomes magnetic to a man that is in his masculine. It's in their spiritual biology to want to provide that support and structure. And I've seen different relationships where it's kind of the opposite, right? And so it's not saying like for me, there's no rules with any of it, but it's just like I see women. There's a woman that comes to my movement class, and she manages men. She says, I'm noticing I'm dressing more manly, like more masculine. And she's operating in her masculine all day. So she comes to my class on a Monday night and she's like, oh, I love this. Like it's helped me so much to be able to drop into my feminine. And, she's like, I don't want to lose that because I'm seeing myself in my masculine most of the week. I want to be able to soften, and I want to be able to be in this place of kind of just going with the flow and receiving. And so that's the biggest thing I think that I notice is just like the hyper independence, the perfectionism, the constantly, talking about achieving and getting things. And I was kind of surrounded by women that were doing that and always feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm behind. I've got to, I need to be doing all this and making all this money like they are. And it was just like this place of feeling like you're just never enough.
Mm. I love what you said about control and the hyper independence because I think a lot of times anyone who's independent learned to be independent based on a time in their life when, they didn't get the support they needed. So it's like you have a time, a trauma or something that hurt you. You're like, okay, I can't rely on people. I have to do everything by myself. And to a certain point in life, that kind of serves you, right? But then
Hmm.
it's like this need of control. And it's like, okay, I need to control. I'm the one who needs to like buy the birthday gifts. I'm the one who needs to do the shopping. I'm the one who needs to
Hmm.
make the meals. I'm the one who does the taxes. And like you could see how
Hmm.
literally every element of life, you're just trying to have as much control. What I think of it is like it's actually this need for safety. Because when you
Hmm.
think you're in control, that's when you feel safe. And they've done these
Hmm.
analogies. I used to be, it was so weird. I was never scared of flying for years.
Hmm.
Like I love flying. And then at 27, I was in a plane with like pretty bad turbulence. And then after that, I got super hyper fixated on turbulence.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of over it now, but like I'm a big traveler. I travel like at least once a month. So I just kind of like grinned and bared it. I was like,
Yeah.
okay. And so anyway, I got into this world of like really learning from pilots and stuff like that. And he's like, the biggest difference of why you're scared in an airplane versus why you're scared in a car is because you feel like you can always control the car. You know what I mean? There's not
Mm,
actual more safety in the car. Obviously, we know that there's more car crashes, but it's this illusion of it's like this feeling of safety because of the illusion of control. And so I
yes.
think that that's a really fascinating thing to really pick out of that is that there's a
Mhm.
reason why we're so hyper independent and so trying to control things is we think it's safety.
Absolutely.
But I
Yeah.
think what you do differently and that you found so compelling in your work is like you're finding that safety now in your body, in the expression of your body, in the embodiment of the feminine. So I know
Mhm.
that you also teach dance classes and movement. So like how can we find that safety in other ways other than this like freak control?
Yeah.
I'm doing like claws with my hands if anyone can't see me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're talking about, it's absolutely survival mode.
Yeah.
They learned it from either a young age or they had examples of women around them that were hyper independent, didn't need, didn't want to rely on anybody to help them. And so, movement to me, dance is one of the quickest ways that we can get out of our head and into our bodies. So the masculine is very logic mind, and I'm an Enneagram 3. I think you were too, the achiever, right? And we're always operating from this like logic, like what makes the most sense logically. And a couple of years ago, I was just feeling, I kept saying, I just feel so disconnected from my body. I feel disconnection. I feel like if I remove alcohol, that's like that will help me. I don't know why I felt called to remove alcohol, but the thing I kept saying was I feel disconnected from my body. I didn't feel connected to spirituality. And so I was invited to go to a feminine embodiment workshop. And I went and she would play music and we would just kind of dance how and move how our body wanted to move. And I felt this like I was like, this is it. Like this is what I need in order to drop into my feminine is and help me get out of my head because it's super hard for someone like me to get out of my head, out of that logic mind. And so turning on music, just shaking it out, like just literally jumping and moving around, is a really, really good way to do it. And that's why we started these movement, feminine embodiment movement classes to help women do that. But also just like out in nature, being out in nature, going on nature walks, like that helps us to kind of feel more connected to something and be and it's very cyclical. Nature is very cyclical. I like to really be in tune with nature and go outside and go on walks in all of weather. And there's other ways, taking a hot bath at the end of the night after a long day's work, lighting a candle, creating these rituals that kind of become like your roots. Um, a morning routine. I like to call them my sacred mornings. I like to start my day with myself and spend at least an hour to myself every morning, where I write, I pray, I do a meditation, I move if I feel like I need to move. And so, those are some of the things that I do, but there's many different ways, women can drop into their feminine. I know for a lot of women, dance isn't the most comfortable thing. And I'm seeing a lot of women that want to come to my class, but they're mostly afraid of dancing in front of other women. And so there's this aspect too of being feeling safe with being seen and being witnessed by other women. And so I do a lot of things in my class to help with that. We do a lot of somatic movement in the beginning of class to help everyone get out of their nerves, to get out of their head. And that seems to really help, them be able to get into their body and just listen to the music and not really worry about who's around and who's watching.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so cool because I used to dance a lot when I was younger, and it's something that
Mhm.
felt so good. And, whether it's like hard to find classes now or just like getting back into that energy, it can feel really like you said, almost like intimidating or just like, the
Mhm.
mirrors there, like the body, everyone's like watching and stuff like that. But just remembering like that sense of movement as like this most natural form of expressing our body and like making it for us and actually
Yeah.
feeling like there's these like, whether it's specific dance moves or ways to feel like a little more sensual by using like your shoulders or your hips. Sometimes it's easier to kind of move your body that way and then feel the feeling versus the other way around of like, how can I feel more
Yeah.
feminine? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I love that. And
Yeah.
so
And
what are the
I
cool like things that you've seen for like people coming to your classes? Like kind of how have you seen that affect either with your people you're working with and your programs or in your from your classes? Like, do you have any like differences of like, okay, someone came like this and now they're like this after doing this work?
Oh yeah, there's women that come pretty regularly now, and I see more confidence in them. We do mirror work where we do a dance. We always do one dance in front of the mirror, and it is a little bit more sensual, where we practice touch. And the playlist that I curate, I do it very intentionally. So I kind of take everyone on a journey. There's always a theme. So this month we've been working with the lover archetype, and we dance with both the light and the shadow of the archetype because we have both. Like there's both sides. And I've seen women come and we'll do in one class we did across the floor and we were dancing in the shadow of an archetype, and I said, I want you to dance how it feels to play small, how it feels to be a people pleaser. And I mean, it was the most beautiful thing I had ever witnessed, just emotion, crying, just for them to be able to like express it and move it through their body and express it in the art of dance is just, I mean, it was just magical to witness. And so I think like you, I also grew up dancing, and I know there's so many other women that grew up dancing, and it's like where, why all of a sudden one day we just stopped, and that's if you want to find your passions, you have to kind of look at what were you doing when you were growing up. And for me, I was dancing almost every day. I was, making up dances and performing them in front of my family. And at some point, I lost that. I would dance at the clubs in my 20s, but then when I stopped going out, I didn't have that anymore. So I am seeing more and more women finding their way to the dance studios right now. You're seeing it online. All of these like mom classes and women that are like finding their way back to dance.
Yeah. And I love that lens too, especially of like now that you're alcohol free. Yeah, maybe, you did have a time in your life when you did go to the clubs or whatnot.
Yeah.
Or it's just like you actually never even learned how to move your body without that kind of like fake confidence that you get from drinking and stuff like that. So I can see it as
Mhm.
like, what do I do when I don't drink? It's like this is the cool stuff that you do now, right? You go
Yeah,
find
no,
like
absolutely. And I when I was introduced to feminine embodiment, I had just removed alcohol and me and my husband had a romantic night out planned. And what I would normally do is put on a little lingerie and dance for him, but I would do that drunk. Like I would need that liquid courage in order to do that. And I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? And I had just gone to that feminine embodiment workshop and I was like, it's on. Like I got the playlist from her and I was excited to be able to do that. And then the next day I went to Pilates and I kind of shared with the women what I was going to do and they were all just like, heck no, there's no way I would feel comfortable dancing like that in front of my husband. And that to me just it was sad. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, and that's kind of when I knew I'm like, this is the work I want to get into. This is I feel like women should be able to feel confident and feel safety in their sensuality. And just confident moving their body in front of the person that's like they should feel the most safe in front of.
yeah. And I love this work. It obviously applies whether you're, single or partnered or whatnot. But I
Yeah.
think what you mentioned earlier about the polarity of like we're attracted to the opposite. And so when someone is in there, let's just say for this example, we have a woman who is in her hyper masculine, it starts to like detract her partner's ability to be in their masculine. And so it's like it
Mhm.
changes the swing of that polarity. And then you're
Mhm.
wondering, like, well, why doesn't my partner do this for me or like surprise me like this or do this kind of things? So if we were like specifically looking for people who are partnered, And I think like what you just talked about is like a real primal desire. Like I
Mhm.
want to feel sexy and sensual and confident in front of my partner. I want to, do it with the lights on. I want to, all those different things. And yet it's so funny how taboo that can actually feel, even though maybe you've been married for 10, 20 years, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so how have you noticed this work of like feminine embodiment like change maybe your own relationship or also anyone you work with?
Well, I've really noticed a shift in my marriage. One of my biggest fears when I went alcohol free, my husband was still drinking and he still does, but my one of my biggest fears was us losing that connection. And we when we had met there, we were always drinking and stuff like that. So it was like we had to almost relearn our whole relationship and marriage. And so and he like we even talked about this the other day about that night when I danced and he just like was like that was incredible. Like that was just like the best thing ever. And so just like being able to do that and having the confidence and showing him that it just made him more drawn to me, more attracted to me and it just like and then also like me softening and just like allowing him to like hold me and um because a lot of our marriage, I felt like almost like it's like I was like almost like a burden. Like he does really well, he's very successful, and like how am I holding my part? Like, how am I pulling my weight is how I always felt. And so I feel like me letting go of that and being like, you know what? I'm gonna just totally be okay with like, yes, he provides and he supports me, and I'm just gonna love and have so much gratitude for him, like for him to do that for me. I feel like there's just been this like shift in our relationship, and I've seen him and his business. He's just like taking off it in his business, his work, and I'm not gonna like attribute that to me, but it's like I feel like there's definitely this like, now that I am like I've shifted and I've started feeling more safety in my feminine, it's almost like it's like encouraged him to like fully, step into that masculine role, right?
Yeah.
Um, and just like our connection, like I just have so much gratitude. Even this morning, I heard a song on the radio and it was just so beautiful. And I just cried thinking about our love. I feel like I have this deeper, like, I have a deeper sense of joy and gratitude for our marriage and for him. Now doing this work, leaning into the feminine.
Yeah. I think there's so many things that you said that I relate to as well. Like I remember when I first met my husband, we actually worked at the same job. And
Mhm.
so he was definitely out earning me, but I was like competitive about that. And then even when we got married and I was like, why would I want my husband to make less money? Well, how, in what world does that make sense? But it's this weird, like we're like, trying
Yeah.
to like compare ourselves to people. And that's what you just described at the beginning of like,
Yeah.
how can you allow and receive and really support people?
Hmm.
And then that like feeds into you as well. And it doesn't mean you
Yeah.
don't do either, but it's just a more beautiful symbiotic relationship at the end of the day. Okay, let's talk
Exactly. And
about
it's
the
envy. Hmm.
Let's talk about the dark side, though, of feminine, or like soft girl healing. So there can be a point too where we use this kind of like, oh, I'm just going to receive, I'm just going to allow the universe to come to me as like almost
Hmm.
like a mask for fear of like when we are meant to take action, but we're not taking action. So how do you
Hmm.
know personally when like it is a moment of like, okay, I'm going to relax, I'm going to receive, I'm going to like soften into this versus like, no, I need to just do the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. The dark feminine is something that I am like newly kind of like looking into and have started kind of reading about. Marion Woodman talks about it in her book, The Conscious Femininity, too. And kind of how she describes it is like this paralyzing feeling of just like, someone who can't function. Like they wake up, but I don't know enough about the dark feminine to really like fully explain like what it is, but I can see how like somebody would look at this as be like, so what? Are we just supposed to lay around and frolic in the fields and play in the garden all day? Like we can't do that, right? Our society, we live in a society that, doesn't support that. And so I don't know. I feel like there is like this. So Ali Duzette talks about masculine and feminine, and she shows it as like the yin yang sign. And so it's like the white part is the masculine, the yang, and the yin is the black part, the feminine. And then the little dot is like, so if you were like if you were feeling very in tune and aligned in your feminine energy, you would be 90% in the black, like the 90% is the black part. The little white dot is 10% in your masculine. But we just live in a society that doesn't support that, right? Like we can't, it's a little bit more demanding of us, right? We've got to, be able to still provide the structure and the support. But I think there's a way to do it. And like you can, at the end of the day, you've been operating in your masculine all day. At the end of the day, you can drop into your feminine. You can do, different practices to drop into your feminine. Um, but I think that like it's, I don't know. I don't think that it's something that, I don't know where I'm going with this. Sorry. What is the question again? Say it again.
No
Edit.
worries, you're good. We'll edit this part.
Edit. Yeah.
Just like how to know when you have to do like the hard work or the ambition or the action versus when you're just scared to do
Oh,
it. So
okay.
you
Yeah.
like hold back and then you're like, oh, I'm just receiving.
Yeah. So I guess how I would answer that is, and I feel like if you're in tune with your body and you're kind of in tune with your cycle, like a woman that is still having periods, right? And she's in her cycle, how I do it is I will kind of work with that. And like women being in our feminine is very cyclical. And so when I'm ovulating, that's when I pump it all out. That's when I create all my ideas. I like, I get online and I create all of my templates and things that I need to use. And so it's just learning how to like work with your energy, learning, because throughout the month, we our energy, we kind of have to ride that wave. And so, just being able to, because you have certain times in the month where you do have more energy and you do feel like, okay, I can do. And then it's like you get to your luteal phase or your, menstrual phase. And it's like, now I'm going to go inward and I'm going to just be open to kind of receiving. Maybe I'm going to, sleep in a little bit longer. I'm going to journal a little bit during that time. And so I kind of work with my cycle that way throughout the month, where there are times where I am like leaning deep into my feminine, and then times where I'm a little bit more leaning into my masculine.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense of like using the nature, your own cycles, like all
Yeah,
these ways of having like the phases, knowing that because I think what's so hard when like you and I are the threes, right?
yeah,
When you have this like very high ambitious type of personality, is that when you're in the rest phase, you're just like if you're guilting yourself or you're feeling lazy or you're feeling like, oh, I'm missing out on the, productivity I could have to know that like it's literally like a either a waterfall or a roller coaster where you have to go down to go up and then to
hmm
really embrace it and then to really milk it and just really enjoy it and allow
hmm
that to fill your cup so much and just trust that I'm about to crest the next wave in just a moment. Like I just need to chill here and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
hmm
And I think it's so hard. I was just actually in a workshop earlier today where we had to close our eyes for like the first 5 minutes and I was already starting my workday, so I was like, this is the last time I want to close my eyes. You know what I mean? It's like that feeling where you just can't sit still. But it's
hmm
such good lessons for, especially when you feel like that. It's like that's when you actually can like really get the gold out of just resting like that. I love it. So a lot
Yeah.
of this like interest in this area and working with women, it also like dawned with your own transformation of going alcohol free. So I'm curious, like,
Mhm.
how did your healing journey, how did they kind of coexist together, and how did you recognize that? You did want to, remove alcohol from your life. And I'm curious as well if you think there's any connection between modern women wanting to be in their feminine, but inadvertently using alcohol to do that in ways that then don't work. Because like
Right.
you mentioned,
Yeah.
like you had to drink before you did the dance in the past, right? So it was
hmm
almost like this way that we could let go and relax and like not care, but then obviously it backfires.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really goes back to when, like I said, I was feeling very disconnected from my body and spirituality. And we know the word alcohol means spirit, right? And so, like you were just describing, it's like people who are drinking in a way, subconsciously, I think they're searching for that light. They're searching for spirit, spirituality and getting more in tune with whatever you believe in, a higher, divine, higher source, God, whatever. But for me, that's where it started, was just me feeling like I needed to get more in tune with myself, my body. And then I found Dee Dee Jordan online, who she went through your program as well, and she called it a sober chapter, which I was really drawn to because the thought of removing alcohol forever felt really scary to me and not doable. And so that's the approach I took. I remember going on a vacation with my family and just being like, oh, I really wish I could do this alcohol free. And then I went and I ended up drinking and I came home and I just was like, that's it. I'm ready to do this. I reached out to her and I said, I'm going to be doing this. I made it symbolic. I started it on my birthday. And it was the last year of my 30s. And so I was like, I'm going to do this last year of my 30s alcohol free and I'm going to need support. And so I hired her to coach me. And then she is the one. It's weird because once you put out in the universe, like you start listening to yourself, your intuition, your soul, and you're like, this is, I'm just feeling this nudge to do this. And then you do it, the universe will put the right people in your path. And so I had Dee Dee there to coach me. And then she's the one that introduced me to Taryn, who is the feminine embodiment coach here in Utah. And I went to her workshop. And so it was just like this snowball effect. And it was like, I didn't always know where the path, where it was all leading me, but I just kept trusting. That's when I started developing a strong morning routine. I started meditating. I started getting downloads. Even my business name, Soul Beginnings, came to me in a meditation around that time. And I just kind of trusted that this was all happening for me, and following that. And then, going to that workshop, coming back and saying, like, this is the work I want to be doing. I started journaling about wanting to help other women connect to themselves, like wanting to, to help other women feel more confident and present in their lives, which is something I had been struggling with for a long time.
Mm.
So I knew it was there. And then my daughter dances at a studio, and I kind of started saying stuff to the owner. I want to do these feminine embodiment classes. And then last summer she said, Ash, why don't you start your classes here? You can host them every Monday night. And so I've been doing them since last September is when I started them. And, that's it. I mean, it's just a dream. It's a dream to my inner child. My 8-year-old self would just be like so happy to know that I finally got to become a dance teacher. But yeah, it's all just been, so connected. And it's, and I see women, and like to your point, alcohol is the quickest way to kind of get us just not feeling, it's just like this, like quick way to get us like out of our heads, right? And just like relaxed. And I can see, like, initially that it does that for us. But for me, hangovers were really hard on me. I would beat myself up for days afterwards. And it just felt like I was trying to live consciously. I was like doing all of this like healing and spirit, I went on a spiritual retreat and all of this, and it just felt like it was going completely against what I was working towards. And part of being a woman is like our superpower is feeling. And alcohol numbs our feelings. Our nervous system is our superpower. Being able to feel and express how we feel, and vulnerably expressing how we feel, that is being in your feminine. And the masculine it's literally, there to like be able to provide support in, the feelings that you're expressing. And so if you're not able to do that, that's when you're just living in this like place of like, it starts to just feel like really disconnection, like deep disconnection from yourself, your soul, all of that. So
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you're
my
guiding
answer.
women with this work. It's so good. And I've learned a lot myself. I love taking notes and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
know that there's some people who are super lucky because they already live in Utah and they can come to your
Yeah.
dance classes. What city are they in and where people can find more information about that? And then if people
Yeah.
want to learn more about your movement and your, body of work and stuff like that, where can people find you online as well?
Yeah. So I host my feminine embodiment movement classes every Monday night at Junction Dance Studio in Cottonwood Heights here in Utah. And I also do workshops. So if you follow me on Instagram, it's soul underscore beginnings. Sorry, soul underscore beginnings. And so if you follow me there, I'm always announcing, workshops. I've also started kind of playing around with the idea of doing some online stuff because I've had some requests for that. And then I also am going to be offering right now, I'm walking a few women through my new, it's a 5-week one-on-one container, for some just like really in-depth, supportive coaching, for feminine embodiment. And so it's kind of a journey that I will be taking women through. Right now, I'm just starting that. And so that is going to be offered on my website here in the next couple months. And so that's just soul-beginnings.com.
Well, it's so cool how you can take like all of the subconscious change work and really make it your own and like really speak to
Mhm,
the things that you care about and have been the most like transformative in your life as well. And that's
mhm.
why I said you said it earlier how I have that theory that there's not enough coaches for everyone there. We need more
Mhm.
of them is because we're all so unique in the things that we love to talk about and help with and who we're attracting and all that good stuff. So I hope this
Yeah.
episode was really helpful to anyone listening who wants to tap into the feminine, but also a really good example of just how fun you can have to like
Mhm.
really embody your interests and your passions in a career that truly expresses you. And you can dance on Monday nights. Like it's so cool, right? So we're
Yeah.
going to be sure to include all the show links that you mentioned in the notes below, where to find you and all that good stuff. Ashley, thank
Mhm.
you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carolina. This was so fun.